Hi everybody, how are you? It's Mike Andrew, once again providing a short video with practical insights as it applies to business and leadership. Before I begin, I just want to throw out an offer to everybody. Please feel free to generate ideas for topics you'd like me to talk about. If there's a particular area that interests you or you'd like to, listen to a little bit more, I'm happy to do my best to provide my own personal insights in that area. I do get those requests from time to time, and I do my best to follow up on those. So please feel free to throw in a topic or two that you'd like me to offer out to the audience next time. Okay, today, practical insights. I want to talk about executive presence. That's big in our company, and it's big in many companies. Now, I've talked about executive presence before, and I try to keep things practical, but when I look back at a previous video, I think I had like 5 or 6 different things to consider. That's a lot. So I'm going to try to talk about executive presence in a very different and very unique way, and I'm going to focus on one key area to demonstrate executive presence or executive maturity. And that one word is confidence. Having confidence, demonstrating confidence. A confidence to ask questions, confidence to ask those dumb questions, really important. You know, if you look at boards, they get together once a quarter for one day, and the whole objective is to get caught up on the state of the business and to give the CEO confidence that we're going in the right direction, or maybe we have to redirect. But what do they do to get caught up on the state of the business? They listen to the CEO and members of the executive team, but they ask questions. They're really astute at asking good questions, listening and asking questions. They're very experienced, so they know what questions to ask. And the questions, they're not complicated questions. They get right to the heart of the matter, and they're usually dumb questions, but those dumb questions are the good ones. That's what good board directors do. You know, oftentimes I'm conducting interviews for people to get promoted or to hire from the outside. And I'll always come prepared with a list of questions, based on the job, based on the person's background. And often, almost always, I never get to all those questions because I'm listening. And listening, by the way, is a great method of learning how to ask questions. If you listen well, you'll be surprised at the amount of questions that will conjure up. And here's an example. I was interviewing somebody recently, and she was talking about the way she approaches this role and how she looks at business drivers. And so I asked her, I said, what do you mean by business drivers? Can you tell me more about that? Dumb question, but important question, okay? Because what this person might mean by business drivers and what I think of it could be 2 different things. We have a high potential leadership program in our company, and our hypos know that they're being measured on their level of engagement and other things like commitment and progress, but let me just focus on engagement. Engagement is much more than the professor asking a question and someone raising their hand and giving an answer. That's great. That's great. But what we really love is when we see people listening and they'll ask a question to challenge what the professor might say, or they'll ask a question that all of a sudden opens up the floodgates. It opens up great discussion, important discussion that everybody really appreciates. I used to sit through these senior management meetings with all the senior executives, and one by one they would go through just quick updates on the business. There was one guy, you talk about executive presence and executive maturity, and I'll take it a step further, executive intelligence. Not only would he give an update, but he would oftentimes throw out a question to the group. This wasn't the CEO, by the way. He was a very senior person. And he would throw out a question at the group, and you should see how the dynamic and the energy in that meeting changed just by asking those questions. I always say that when I got my MBA many, many years ago, we had to maintain a certain average, a 3.0 or a B average. So I did that, I competed well, and I realized back then, hey, I'm probably smarter than I thought I was, because I did pretty well. What the MBA did to me by far, number one by far, it gave me confidence all these rest of the years. It gave me confidence to ask dumb questions, because if I don't understand something, I know I'm not dumb. So I'm going to ask the dumb questions that people often are afraid to ask. I was in a meeting once years ago where major initiative getting kicked off, and I was on the team, and the person running the initiative was talking about the potential ROI of this initiative. And I raised my hand. I said, "Could you explain, what you mean by ROI?" And the person looked at me and said, "Mike, it's return on investment." I said, "No, I understand it means return on investment, but what do you mean by return on investment in this case? How are we measuring ROI in this case?" Dumb question, but a good question. Really important. I was recently talking to somebody who had in his development, he needs to be able to speak up and speak out. He said, "Mike, how do I do that?" So we talked about it a bit because I had to understand what this was all about. And to me, I said, if you want to really demonstrate your ability to speak up and speak out, have confidence to ask those dumb questions. Having viewpoints, a fact-based point of view, great. Being decisive, great. But if you want to really distinguish yourself, be that person in a meeting as a manager with your team to ask those questions, ask those dumb questions, or speaking up to your senior team. That's a great example of speaking up, speaking out with executive presence, with confidence. And finally, you get in all of us, those of you listening, in our day-to-day business, we interact with different organizations that have their own language, their own acronyms. Don't be afraid. I've learned not to be afraid to ask, what do you mean by that? Because I don't know what it means. I don't work there. So whether it be a technical term or a term specific to that function, asking those dumb questions with confidence, doing it with confidence. So thank you for listening. I hope you found this worthwhile, and feel free to comment or thumbs up, whatever you'd like. And thank you again. We'll see you next time. Take care.